Hello, it's Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot, and welcome to my monthly journal pages. Today we'll be flipping through my January pages and chatting about the journal spreads and techniques that I used to connect with my personal tarot practice last month. So starting off, I just want to note that I got this adorable little fox charm. It's actually a pendant. Let me bring it up in here so you can see it. Look how pretty that is. It is reversible, but I like this side. I ordered it on Etsy and it took a little bit to get here, but I was so excited when it came. So it is living on the front of my journal now, and I think it just looks absolutely beautiful there. So let's just kind of let him hang out down there, and let's go ahead and jump into my journal. So a couple of things I've been actually making use of my pockets this year. I've got some different spreads in here. I do still have just a couple little pieces of ephemera just for fun. But what I've been doing is keeping my little cutouts of my seasonal Sunday spreads that I'm doing on Instagram. So I've been printing those out, cutting them out to size and keeping them in here. I also have a couple of other little spreads that I like to do throughout the month, or sometimes do throughout the month, that I have in here as well. And I also have a list of my Wednesday journaling prompts. In my recent guide that I released on how to keep a tarot journal, I have in the back of that 52 weeks of journaling prompts, so one for each week, and I've been doing those every Wednesday as just a single card pull, and we'll see that in my journal. I also got this little fox patch. He's a little iron-on patch, but I just paper clipped him in here because I thought he was so cute, and he's now living in here. So into my tarot journal for the month of January. I haven't done anything else in this first insert besides just kind of checking back in with it, because I have my reading in there, and I have just some notes about some things that I want to be working on, cultivating and creating over the course of 2021. So I haven't really added anything to that, but I've been coming back to it to reference it just to remind myself throughout the month. I've really enjoyed having that in there. I have less space so that I can do a check-in, perhaps maybe seasonally, and include those in this little insert as well. So in here I have my 5-year deck tracker that I created, and I did go ahead and add the decks that I worked with for January for 2021. So I have all of 2020s in here, and now I've started adding in 2021. That's going to be really fun to take a look back and see which decks I actually used every month. I have a suspicion that they're probably fairly similar every year, but we'll see. You can definitely see that while I didn't use really any of the same decks per se, besides the Wild Unknown, that was the only deck that I used in both January of last year and January of this year. I can tell by looking at the decks, the theme or kind of aesthetic that I had during that particular month was pretty similar in both months. So that kind of tells me that I kind of have a general theme and aesthetic that I am drawn to at the beginning of every year. We'll see that actually flows and changes a little bit seasonally for me as we move along. But I did go ahead and get those added in here. I didn't really do anything special with it. I'm just kind of writing them down. It doesn't have to be like super pretty or anything, just want to get them in there. So moving into my actual tarot journal. Now I am doing things a little bit different this year, where I'm not putting any of my moon or Sabbath or really intentional seasonal readings in here. Anything that has to do with my personal practice is actually going into my seasonal grimoire instead. What is in here is my daily or weekly tarot readings only. So I've kind of divided them up by those two different sort of categories so that I can kind of keep all my daily stuff together in here, and then moving all of my sort of seasonal and sacred practices over into my seasonal grimoire. So if you want to see what that looks like, I do have a video of that on my other channel. I don't know if I'll be sharing it here or not. I haven't quite decided yet. So to start off with, you can see it over there if you'd like to check it out. So this year I am using a Archer and Olive B6 to start with. They don't have a huge selection of B6s, but I thought the black with the gold moon worked just fine for the kind of setup I have going on currently. It is of course in my same old Chic Sparrow, Mr. Darcy, buttered rum leather. that's just my tarot journal. That's where it lives. So moving inside, we have the little date that I put in there to just cover up that this journal belongs to page. Just not a huge fan of those. I know it's my journal. I know it belongs to me. So I just covered it up with the year. And I do quite like that. So while I had the majority of my decks picked out to work with for the month, I didn't write anything in here until the end of the month. That way, if there was a deck that popped in that I wasn't intending to work with, like the Black Lily Tarot, I can just go ahead and add that. So I just waited to the end and then I just listed out all of my decks here. I like having them here just at a glance so that when I am moving through my book, if I want to go back and see what decks I worked with in January, I can just quickly come to this page. I could also just go to my 5-year deck tracker too. It is a little bit of redundant information, but eventually this will get stored away and I'll be able to reference it later on, and the deck tracker will hopefully live in my journal for a whole span of 5 years. Or I guess 4 now, because 2020 is over, thank goodness. So moving along, we had my cover page. So one of the things that I incorporated back into my tarot practice, because it's not a new practice, it's actually an old practice that I've done for several years now, and that is to do a kind of monthly overview type of spread. This time I used my monthly magic, which is another spread from my How to Keep a Tarot journal. So for my monthly magic reading, what I'm doing is pulling a animal energy, a guiding energy, and a botanical energy to kind of see me through the month. Although I didn't work with the Hedge Witch Botanical over the whole course of the month, I did use it to pull for my one botanical card through for the month of January. And then I used my tarot decks for that month to do my monthly reading. And so basically this just kind of gives me like an overview of the sort of energies are going to be with me throughout the month of January. And then, of course, I spent some time kind of reading and reflecting on what that was going to be for me. And so that was a fun page to do. I'm going to do that every month. So moving into the first spreads, we have the first spread is the seasonal Sunday spread. Now I have switched things on my Instagram, and this year instead of the self-care Sunday spreads, I'm doing seasonal Sunday spreads, which does tie a little bit more into my personal practice. And I really just wanted to tap into that seasonal energy a little bit more than I have been, because that's an energy that is pretty important in my personal practice. So I switched all of my self-care readings. They could still totally be used as self-care readings because they do have a very personal growth self-care element to them, but they are tied in around the seasonal energy, and that would be the seasonal energy around me. So it definitely would tie into the Northern Hemisphere. So I have my little printout from my Instagram post with my 3 prompts and my question. I pulled my 3 cards. For this, I was using the Naked Heart all month long. As I mentioned in my monthly reflections, it wasn't really my favorite for multiple card pulls. I found that it worked a lot better for my Wednesday pulls, but I had started the month with it, so I wanted to finish the month with it. And I just have my message here. So throughout the month, I was unexpectedly also called to kind of do some readings with the Black Lily Tarot. That wasn't a deck that I had set out to use, but it's one that I felt myself drawn to use multiple times throughout the month. So I just have a couple of 3-card readings in here. And for this one, I used basically washi and magazine pages to create this layout. You'll see that I do that quite often. I just keep an old magazine at hand on my desk, and when I need some kind of background color and texture, I pull pieces of that out. One of the reasons I like magazine is because it's usually quite thin, and so when I'm layering things, it's a lot nicer to have thinner materials to work with, because then I can layer them up and they don't add too much bulk to my journal. You can see here, if we look at the first few pages I have, it's already getting quite bulky at the top here, because these are all the pages that I've glued and I've layered, and you can see that compared to these nice flat pages. So magazine is great because it provides a lot of texture and color, but it doesn't add a lot in terms of bulk to your journal. For this one, I also did some washi, and I have some black craft paper here. Unfortunately, my black craft paper that I have at hand at the moment is very thick, so it does add a lot of bulk to my journal. Normally, I would try to go with the thinner paper, but you use what you have. So moving along, another reading that I did going into the first full week of January was a week in focus spread. Now, kind of similar to my monthly magic, this is kind of like a week ahead type of spread. So for this one, I'd written my 5 prompts here on this piece of tracing paper with each of the cards that I pulled, and my write-up is actually behind it. It's not really so much to provide privacy as it is just to kind of create a nice little layered effect. This was kind of my takeaway from the whole reading, and something that I wanted to remember to focus in on for the week is just taped down with a piece of washi so that it flips over. So here in our first Wednesday, we have the first of the prompts that I was talking about, where I have those 52 weeks of tarot and journaling prompts. So I started with my first one with how can I be more present in this moment? And I was pulling cards for the Naked Heart Tarot. Again, just using magazine page background that I thought really tied into that particular message and the card that I got with this beautiful Child of Swords. And I just tore a piece of white paper off, cut it down to fit this big black space here, and wrote over the top of that because white gel pen does not really go over magazine very well. Rather than putting the whole card on here, I made a full-size color copy of it and then just cut around the actual image, because as you can see here, and as you probably know, the Naked Heart Tarot has a lot of white space on it, and sometimes that's just eating up real estate on my page. So sometimes I actually trimmed it down to just the imagery so that it wasn't taking up so much space on the page itself. So in this page here, we have where I actually pulled cards for a particular prompt, which was what wisdom emerged this week. And so that was the prompt that I was working with. It was just a question that I had. It wasn't like from anything. It was just a question that was knocking around in my brain. And so I pulled my 3 cards and then wrote my little message. And for this one, I kind of just pulled in that green and yellow color, did some green and yellow dots and some matching writing. So you can see here that my theme for January was to try to go a little bit more minimalist with my journal, just so that it didn't take up quite so much time. Although some spreads definitely took more time than others. Some of them I did in just a few minutes. Others took, closer to 15, 20 minutes to put together. But overall, these were all fairly quick and easy spreads that I created to keep things minimal, but still beautiful. So here we have our next seasonal Sunday, and you will see that I pretty much followed the same layout for my seasonal Sunday spreads throughout the whole month of January. And that also did help make it to be really quick and easy, because I did the same thing each week. I had my little printout. I stamped the word Sunday on little sheets of craft paper, and I just wrote the prompt and the date. Made a little color copy of my cards, pasted them in here. I did find that working with cards that have a full white border or white background on top of white paper is a little bit more challenging to work with, because it sometimes gets lost in the page. I also had the same problem with the white borders on all the other decks that I worked with for this particular month. So a lot of times I actually trimmed the white border off on some of these cards. You'll see that too. So while that didn't really cause like an issue, it was just something that I was keeping in mind. And you'll see as we move along that I do try to kind of make some backgrounds to put these cards on, just so that they pop a little bit more and they don't get lost in the white page. So moving along, we have the next week where I did my 3-card pull, and I was working with the wild unknown animal spirits and the wild unknown. Just wrote my date up here, and I loved all of the little yellow speckles on the fox, and I loved that that for that week I had pulled the fox as my energy card, and so I created all these little white speckles that are kind of thicker at the top and bottom and kind of disperse out as we move in towards the page. Again, anything that's written in a different color is usually not my writing. So this here would be from the actual guidebook, whereas over here, what's written in different color is actually the prompts from the spread. So technically that's still my own words, but it just lets me know that that's something that's separate from my own reflections. And that's just a really quick and easy way for me to take a look at that. So here we have our next Wednesday with my next prompt, and this little guy kept coming up for me. So I just have pretty much for this one, just wrote everything from the guidebook or close to it. I didn't really journal about it on my own. I just kind of sat with that energy, which is kind of funny because he will reappear for me, as we'll see later on. So here on Friday, again, we just have a 3-card reading, a bit from the guidebook written in a different color, and then my reflections. And down here, I had done this little doodle thing and I did not like the way it came out. It was like a little moon doodle with like little stripes coming out of it to kind of mimic this going on here. I didn't like the way it looks, so I just put a big old piece of washi over it, called it good. It looks intentional, but it's totally covering up a mistake. So here we have my next seasonal Sunday spread. Again, the different colors are just the prompts from the spread and then my reflections. We have my cards, and you'll see that I kind of tried to start creating a drop shadow around these cards because I did feel like they were getting a little bit lost in all the white on the page. So moving into the next week, we have another 3-card spread. You'll see that that's pretty much my go-to most of the time. I'm a 3-card spread girl. I love the way that a 3-card spread works. I love the flexibility of it, the simplicity of it, but the fact that it can provide something really, really deep. So I love that. This one was really interesting because I pulled 3 cards from 3 different decks. So we have from the Connected and Free oracle that I pulled for my energy for the week. I pulled from the Wild Unknown Animal Spirit for my focus for the week, and the Wild Unknown Tarot for my message for the week. Again, we have a little bit from the guidebook, my own reflections, and what really called to me with this reading was the sit still, listen, and receive. Those were keywords that I pulled out, and those really resonated with me, so I pulled those out, and you'll see I actually reuse those again later on. And they are right here on my Friday reading, but we'll get to that in a minute. So over here we have my next Wednesday prompt, and for this one I did a little bit of fun collaging. I made a full color copy of the 4 of Swords from the Naked Heart Tarot because that was the card that I pulled. I added again some magazine, and this time what I did was I actually cut out the various pieces from the card. So I have the 4 swords and the cat that was in the card, and I actually collaged them onto the page in a way that kind of made a little bit of sense to me at the time. And then I have just some write-up from the guidebook and my own reflections. This was really fun because I took all the elements from the card and I created a collage out of it. So that was a lot of fun and I enjoyed that one. So here on this Friday, we can see here that these were my keywords. So we had still, listen, and receive. So what I did on this Friday was I actually, with those prompts in mind, pulled 3 more cards from the same decks and did use those 3 keywords as my actual prompt. So my card for the prompt of still was chakra love, my card for listen was gazelle, and my card for receive was the Ace of Swords. And again, here's a little bit from the Animal Spirits guidebook because I really enjoyed that guidebook, and my own reflections. So this was tied back into kind of my Monday spread of here was my energy, focus, and message. And my takeaway was the sit still, listen, and receive. And I really wanted to see how I was able to embody that during the week. So I pulled my cards to kind of do a check-in. How did that work for me throughout the week? And then wrote my reflections on it. So here's another just kind of spur of the moment spread that I did using the Black Lily and the Connected and Free Oracle. And it was just kind of a, what do I need to know at this moment? And so this one, again, just using some magazine with matching colors. So moving into our next seasonal Sunday, you'll see again here, just following the same kind of similar layout. That kind of allows me to do it a little bit quicker because I kind of know what's going to go on the page after I've done my reading. So moving into the last full week of January, here I was playing with trying to pull all of these colors from all these cards into my lettering, which was kind of fun. And then I have some keywords that I pulled out of from the frog card from the book, and then my own reflections. And again, just working with those 3 different decks, I really like the way those 3 decks work together. We had the Wild Unknown, the Connected and Free, and the Animal Spirit. And then there is that Nine of Wands monkey again. He actually came up for me a couple more times in some other just various card pulls that I did. So he's hanging around. So again, we had another prompt. I pulled my card and did my journaling on it. Again, just some basic magazine just to add that little pop of color without so much of the bulk. The one thing I did note was where I used my my Uhu glue stick, it does kind of bow and bend my pages a little bit. They kind of get a little bit, as you can see here, like wavy. And I found that on the pages that I used my little tape roller, I didn't have so much of that bowing and bending and waviness of my page. You know, tape versus glue, wet versus dry. It makes sense, but I just thought I would note that. So moving into our last Friday in January, we had, again, my 3-card spread. This one was really cool. I love how all the colors picked up on each other. It doesn't get planned that way. That's just how I pull the cards. And I really kept it simple because I really wanted the focus to be on the cards themselves and not so much on all the background elements. So I just put this nice black banner up here for the date and my cards in the center to really draw that focus down, and then my message from the guidebook and my own just really short and sweet little message to myself. And then my last entry here is my seasonal Sunday spread from the last Sunday in January, which also happened to be the last day in January. Again, pulling my cards from the Naked Heart Tarot and just noting my reflections. And we are set and ready for February. So as you can see here, like overall, I went pretty minimalist. I tried to keep things pretty clean, pretty simple. I mean, I did do some collaging because it's me and I just do that. But I really love the way that all these pages turned out. I love how it really matches the energy of the deck. And you'll see as my journals progress, or if you've seen any of my previous journals, that does tend to be the way that I journal. What goes onto the page does tend to kind of match what's going on the card. And I just think that that's a fun way to bring the energy of the deck into my tarot journal as well. So that was a look at my pages from my January tarot journal. Thank you for joining me today. You'll find links for everything featured here in the description box below. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you again soon for more creative tarot for an inspired life.